It was just after 9 p.m. when Tom slid a stack of papers across the kitchen counter, his voice calm but rehearsed. "It's just for tax purposes," he said, smiling like it was no big deal. "You're always talking about being smart with our finances. This is the best move for our family." The granite surface felt ice cold beneath my fingertips as I stared at the property transfer forms with my name nowhere on them. My hand shook, but I didn't let him see. The twins were finally asleep upstairs, and the quiet only made the moment louder. His fingers brushed mine, but the connection felt wrong, hollow. That's when I knew something was deeply off. "My name is Caitlyn Wilson. I'm a physician, a mother of 2, and apparently an obstacle in my husband's plan to steal the home I bought before we met. Stay with me to see how I uncovered his secret affair, dismantled his betrayal piece by piece, and protected my children from the man who tried to leave us with nothing. Before there was betrayal, there was belief. I was 32 when I finally closed on my dream home, a stunning Victorian in the Heights neighborhood of Houston. I'd saved for it since my residency years, skipping vacations and pinching every penny while working back-to-back shifts at Houston Methodist. That house symbolized more than real estate. It was independence, stability, and the promise of a future I'd built on my own. I renovated every inch, with care, from the crown molding to the nursery I didn't know I'd need yet. Then came Tom. We met at a charity event hosted by the hospital. He was charming, funny, attentive. He worked in marketing, always had the right words. Our courtship moved fast. Within a year, we were married. He praised my drive, said he admired how hard I worked, called me his superwoman. When I got pregnant with twins, he was thrilled, or so he said. We adjusted our lives for the chaos that followed: sleepless nights, daycare, diaper blowouts, and late-night triathlon. Blissful failure in the final days of our racing. So lovely felonizing tonight, with no regrets, a long, happy ending, where I could be happy again. Harry, I thought we were a team. But slowly, something shifted. Tom stopped showing up, first emotionally, then physically. He said he was tired, said I was too focused on work. He picked fights about my hours, accused me of choosing the hospital over our home. And yet, when I pulled back on shifts to focus more on family, he grew resentful again. This time over money. At first I justified it. Parenthood was hard, careers were demanding. Maybe it was just a rough patch, but there were signs I couldn't ignore. He started dressing better, going to the gym again. He'd leave the house without saying where he was going, come back with vague explanations. And there was the phone, always packed down. Then he started locking me out of our financial accounts. "It's just easier if one of us handles it," he'd say, brushing off my concerns. I pushed back gently at first. I had always trusted him, and trust had once felt mutual. But when he began pushing me to sign over the house, I froze. He said it was for tax purposes, that it would help us long term. "You're always so practical, Caitlyn. You know this makes sense." But the look in his eyes told a different story. I'd seen it in patients who were hiding something, the slight tremor in their voice, the forced warmth, the avoidance of eye contact. Tom was keeping secret. Still, I didn't want to believe it. I was exhausted, overworked, and focused on caring for our twins, Emma and Ethan, who were only 2 and needed me more than ever. So I hesitated. I paused, and that pause saved everything. That hesitation gave me the space to think, to question, to look beneath the surface of Tom's carefully crafted charm. And when I started pulling at the threads, the whole thing began to unravel. Stay with me to see how I uncovered his secret affair, dismantled his betrayal piece by piece, and protected my children from the man who tried to leave us with nothing. Tom's push for the house transfer intensified quickly. Every conversation circled back to it. He brought it up while I was making breakfast, during bedtime routines, and even via text while I was on call. "Just sign it," he'd say. "You're not a tax expert, Caitlyn. Let me handle it." His voice was smooth, but too smooth, like he was trying too hard to sound reasonable. I knew that tone well. I used it myself when calming agitated patients. He was different lately. Not just distant and calculated. He stopped asking about my day, stopped helping with the twins' baths, and started going to the gym 5 days a week. He bought new cologne, started wearing tailored shirts, and suddenly cared about things he used to scoff at. He was glued to his phone, always guarding it like a lifeline, and when he smiled now, it didn't reach his eyes. One morning, while running late to the hospital, I asked Tom again why he needed the house in his name. "It's just cleaner for taxes," he said, handing me coffee he didn't even make himself. Something in his eyes flickered. That flicker triggered something in me. On my lunch break, I called my best friend. Nah, she's a real estate attorney and one of the few people I trust implicitly. I told her what was happening. The moment I said, "house transfer," her tone shifted. "Caitlyn," she said carefully, "transferring a premarital home into your spouse's name does not give you a tax advantage. If anything, it puts you at risk." I felt the blood drain from my face. "So there's no reason for him to be pushing?" "Legitimate reason," she replied. "And I hate to say it, but I've seen this before. When a husband pushes for a title transfer like this, he's usually planning something, either hiding assets, preparing for a separation, or worse." My stomach turned. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every instinct I'd trained for years in the ER kicked in. Something was very wrong. The next day, during a short break between patients, I checked our shared count. He'd been calling the same number nearly every day for months, sometimes during work hours, sometimes late at night. I did a reverse lookup. The name: Destiny Martinez. I opened social media and typed her name. There she was. Mid-20s, stunning, works in marketing, at Tom's firm. Her latest photo was tagged at a real estate office. The caption read, "Big changes coming, new chapter, bless." Everything fell into place like a punch to the gut. Tom wasn't just trying to manipulate me for taxes. He was trying to steal my house, the home I bought before I ever knew him, to move in with his girlfriend, a woman barely older than my internals. He had orchestrated this entire transfer as a way to kick me out of my own life. And I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The betrayal was real, but instead of exploding in anger, I chose strategy. Confronting Tom would only give him a head start. I needed proof, leverage, and control. So I played along. That evening, I drove to a discreet electronics store that Na recommended. The man behind the counter barely blinked when I explained what I needed: a high-quality voice recorder, small enough to hide in my kitchen. "Protect yourself," he said quietly. "The best evidence is in their own words." I nodded, feeling the weight of every patient I'd ever advised to trust their instincts. Now it was my turn to follow that same advice. I hid the recorder behind a cookbook on the kitchen shelf. Every evening, I let Tom talk, never pressing too hard, just letting him ramble about how this transfer was best for the family. I kept the tone neutral, supportive. Meanwhile, I began transferring my portion of the savings to a separate account under my name. I secured new credit cards and gathered every financial statement I could find: mortgage, bank, retirement, even the twins' daycare records. If Tom wanted war, I wasn't showing up unarmed. He didn't suspect a thing. Each night, I recorded our conversations. During my breaks at work, I reviewed the files, noted timestamps, and categorized his claims. I logged his movements. He was consistent, too consistent, like he'd rehearsed every lie. My suspicion hardened into certainty. He was planning a new life with Destiny, and I was the obstacle he needed to legally eliminate. A week later, Tom came home with the final house transfer documents. "It's all ready," he said, casually, sliding the papers across the same granite counter where this all began. "Just your signature left." I took the pen with steady hands. He stood there, watching me, confidence oozing from every inch of him. I noticed the slight twitch in his jaw, the excited way he kept glancing at his phone, probably waiting for a message from her. I hovered the pen just above the signature line. Then I looked up and said, "Let's talk about Destiny." Tom froze. His smug expression shattered in an instant. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. I dropped the pen and pulled out my phone. You've been calling her for 5 months. Lunches at Lorenzo's, late-night calls, text messages about your new chapter. Sound familiar? He tried to recover, stammering about business dinners and colleagues, but I kept going. She works at your firm. She just signed a lease on a property handled by your real estate contact. She even tagged it New Beginnings. Then I played the recording from 3 nights earlier. His voice filled the kitchen, telling Destiny that the house would be in his name any day now. You've been trying to steal my home, I said coldly, but you forgot who you were married to. The power shifted in that moment. Tom stood there, eyes wide, breathing hard. And I stood calm, armed with evidence, prepared for the storm. Tom's denial was instant, but not convincing. You've got it all wrong, he said, voice shaking as he reached for his phone. Destiny's just a coworker. It's not what it looks like. I didn't say a word. I simply tapped my screen and played the recording again. This time, the part where he whispered, "Don't worry, baby. Once the papers are signed, the house is ours. We'll finally be able to start our life together." His face went pale. His hand fell to the counter. Still, he tried to salvage his plan. I only said that to keep her calm. I never meant any of it. She's been pressuring me. You know how women like that are, slickly, emotional. I raised an eyebrow. Women like that? I asked, my voice calm but firm. Or women who don't have 2 children and a house you're actively trying to steal. Tom sighed and shifted tactics. Kate, come on. You're always at the hospital. You barely sleep. You're never really here. I've felt invisible in this marriage. All I wanted was to be seen again. Can't you understand how lonely that is? That old tone of his, gentle, self-pitying, manipulative, used to work. But not anymore. I work, I said evenly, because I care about our family's future. I work because someone has to. And while I was working 16-hour shifts and raising our kids, you were out promising my house to your girlfriend. He moved toward me, reaching out, eyes glistening. I made a mistake. We can fix this. No, I replied, stepping back. You made a choice, and now you're going to face the consequences. That night, after putting Emma and Ethan to bed, I reviewed every screenshot, every bank record, every recording, again. Then I filed for a temporary restraining order. Tom's sudden shift from manipulation to fury was too fast, too dangerous to ignore. Just hours earlier, I'd received a string of texts from him. They started with desperate apologies, then spiraled into threats. You think you're going to ruin my life, think again, one of them read. You'll regret this. Don't push me. I didn't wait to see what pushing him would look like. I called Na. She answered on the first ring. File it now, I said. He's spiraling. Na didn't hesitate. I know a family attorney who works fast. I'll text you his info. His name's James Cooper. He's good. And discreet. By morning, I had my appointment booked. While Tom thought he still had time to fix things, I was already assembling my case. I gathered the recordings, the photos, the financial documents, and every trace of Destiny Martinez that tied her to Tom's deception. My evidence wasn't speculative, it was airtight. Tom came home the next evening like nothing had happened. He wore his usual work clothes, loosened tie, and the same tired smile. Let's talk, he said, like he hadn't just tried to erase me from the life I built. But when I handed him the restraining order, the smile dropped. You're serious, he whispered. I nodded. You wanted war, Tom. You just didn't think I'd fight back. He stared at the paperwork in silence. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. Sheer making a mistake, he muttered. Mistake, I said again, steady and certain. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't protect what's mine. Tom had always prided himself on being the calm one, the charming talker, the composed professional. But when he walked through the front door after spending the night at Destiny's, expecting to sweet-talk his way back into control, he was met not with a warm welcome, but with the cold weight of a restraining order. I handed it to him without a word. He looked down at the document, then back at me. "What is this?" he asked, though he already knew. "Legal boundary," I answered. "You crossed the line. This just makes it official." He scoffed, shaking his head. "This is insane. You're blowing everything out of proportion." "No, Tom," I said. "You tried to steal my house, lie to our children, and cheat me out of what I built. That's not a misunderstanding. That's premeditated fraud." Days later, we were standing across from each other in court. The room was sterile, the kind of place that felt too cold to hold something as emotional as the unraveling of a marriage. But I had come prepared. My attorney, James Cooper, laid out everything with surgical precision. The judge listened closely as James played the audio recording of Tom reassuring Destiny that the house would soon be theirs. Then came the screenshots, text messages, social media posts, financial statements showing hidden withdrawals. And finally, the timeline, the calls to the shady attorney, the meetings behind my back. Tom's attorney tried to frame it as a classic case of marital tension, just a man in his 40s, overwhelmed by responsibility and looking for validation. They called it a midlife crisis. The judge didn't blink. "I'm seeing evidence not of a crisis," she said, "but of calculated planning to defraud your spouse. There's a clear intent to mislead, conceal assets, and strip your wife of her premarital property." Tom shifted in his seat, the color draining from his face. My hands remained steady in my lap. For once, I didn't feel the need to justify, explain, or defend myself. I had facts, I had truth, and I had nothing to hide. When the judge declared that the house was to remain in my sole ownership, that Tom had no legal claim due to the clear evidence of intent to defraud, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. She continued, granting me primary custody of the twins, and ordering that all of Tom's visitation be supervised until further notice. He protested, of course, said I was alienating the kids. But his voice cracked when the judge referenced the threatening texts he'd sent, the ones that led to the restraining order in the first place. "Mr. Wilson," she said, "you may think you're the victim here, but your actions tell a very different story." After court, Tom followed me into the hallway. "You think this is over?" he hissed, trying to regain that old control. I turned and looked him in the eyes. "For me, it's just beginning. For you, that depends on whether you learn to tell the truth." He didn't answer, just walked away, shoulders slumped, no longer the man who slid those papers across my counter, no longer the man who thought he could outmaneuver me. The power had shifted, and I was finally standing on solid ground. Tom's downfall wasn't dramatic at first, it was quiet. But like a house with a cracked foundation, everything eventually came crashing down. After the court ruled in my favor, he tried to act unaffected, insisting to anyone who would listen that he was still in control of the situation. But behind the scenes, his grip was slipping. Fast. First came the job. His marketing firm, already under pressure from the embezzle investigation, launched an internal audit. The financial records I'd provided didn't just show personal betrayal. They revealed business-level theft. He'd been siphoning money to cover dinner dates, vacations, and even the down payment on a condo Destiny had been eyeing. The firm had no choice. He was terminated immediately, and a criminal complaint was filed. Then came Destiny. Once Tom no longer had the status, salary, or promises he'd dangled in front of her, she vanished. According to a mutual acquaintance, she sent him a text that simply said, "I didn't sign up for this." That was the last he heard from her. And just like that, the woman he thought he could build a new life with was gone, leaving him to face the consequences alone. he spiraled fast. A few weeks later, he was arrested for a DUI, pulled over just 2 blocks from the house he once tried to steal. His mugshot landed in the local police blotter, which a coworker forwarded to me. I didn't gloat. I just closed the email and went back to reviewing patient charts. Some things didn't deserve more than a glance. The divorce was finalized soon after. Tom's lawyer, clearly overwhelmed by his client's legal troubles, pushed for a settlement. With mounting criminal charges, Tom couldn't afford a drawn-out court battle. He signed away any claim to the house and accepted supervised custody of the twins, visits twice a week under the eye of a court uncle observer. He didn't even contest it. The man who once tried to convince me I was too exhausted to fight had no fight left in him. When the day came for Tom to officially move out, I stood in the driveway, holding Emma, while Ethan clung to my leg. Tom loaded the last of his boxes into a borrowed SUV. He didn't speak, just gave the kids a brief wave and looked at me one last time. I didn't speak either. I didn't need to. The silence between us said it all. Not hatred, not vengeance, just the finality of a man who had gambled and lost, and the quiet strength of a woman who refused to fold. In the months that followed, I renovated the twins' rooms. I planted a garden in the backyard. I resumed my night shifts with new focus, and every time I pulled into the driveway, I felt nothing but pride. My house, my sanctuary, my proof that no matter what Tom had tried, he couldn't take away what I'd built. The karma was swift, and it was just. 1 year later, my life barely resembled the chaos it once held. The weight that had settled on my shoulders during those final months with Tom had lifted, replaced by something lighter, steadier, something like peace. I was officially promoted to Chief of Emergency Medicine at Houston Medicine, a position that once felt out of reach when I was juggling toddler tantrums, night shifts, and a failing marriage. Now, I walked into the hospital each day with confidence, leading a team of talented physicians and mentoring young women just starting their journeys in medicine. At home, I poured energy into creating the space my children and I deserved. The twins' rooms were redesigned to reflect their personalities. Ethan's filled with rockets and dinosaurs. Emma's a blend of storybooks and soft pastels. I installed a garden in the backyard with a small corner dedicated to sunflowers, which Emma claimed were her favorite because they always faced the light. I smiled every time I saw them. She wasn't wrong. What surprised me most about this new chapter was how natural it felt. I had worried that life without Tom would feel like a constant adjustment, but the reality was far simpler. Life without him was calm. The small, passive-aggressive comments, the tension over my career, the manipulation cloaked as concern, all of that was gone. What remained was clarity. I no longer second-guessed myself. I no longer minimized my instincts or apologized for my ambition. I was a physician, a mother, and a woman who had defended her home, her children, and her dignity without ever raising her voice. I didn't need to win an argument to win my life back. I had already done that by surviving, by planning, and by walking away with my head held high. The betrayal had once felt like an open wound, but with time, it transformed into something else, something instructive. I started speaking at small women's wellness events, sharing my story not out of bitterness, but to help others see the red flags before they became legal emergencies. I never used Tom's name. I never needed to. The lessons stood on their own. My twins thrived. They remembered less and less of the tension that used to fill our home. Their laughter was a daily reminder that I'd made the right choice. We had our routines: pancake Saturdays, movie nights with forts in the living room, and quiet story time before bed. There was stability, but more importantly, there was joy. I protected my peace fiercely, not with walls, but with boundaries. And with each passing day, I rebuilt not just a home, but a sense of wholeness. My life was no longer about what I'd lost, but about what I'd chosen to preserve. Love, truth, and the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but quietly, unwaveringly endures. Late one afternoon, I sat on the front porch with a cup of tea in hand, watching Emma and Ethan race through the yard. Their laughter rang out across the garden, the same yard where, not so long ago, Tom had shouted accusations and begged for a second chance. Now that chaos felt like a distant echo. The grass was greener. The house, the one he'd tried to steal, stood solid and full of life. I had repainted the front door a bright blue, the twins' favorite color, and planted marigolds along the walkway. It was mine again. Fully, fiercely mine. That morning, a letter had arrived from Tom. His handwriting was familiar, but the contents were not. It was filled with apologies, regrets, and talk of what could have been. I didn't read it twice. I filed it away without responding. Some things didn't need closure. They needed boundaries. I looked out at the children chasing bubbles, the sun casting a warm glow on their curls. This wasn't revenge. This was something stronger. This was justice through perseverance, protection through preparation. I had safeguarded my children's home, their future, and my peace. Sometimes, the most powerful justice isn't revenge. It's a quiet life, well protected, a mother who refused to be tricked, and a house that still stands because she did.